the dare that started it all. The Harrington Gallery sparkled with champagne flutes and polite conversation, the kind of high society art event Olivia Bennet typically avoided. Tonight, however, her best friend Zoe had dragged her along to see the new contemporary exhibit, insisting it would inspire her teaching practice. As they wandered through the elegant space, Olivia felt distinctly out of place in her thrift store dress among the designer-clad patrons. "Look at that man," Zoe whispered, subtly nodding toward a tall figure standing alone before an abstract painting. "He's been staring at that same piece for 20 minutes without moving." Olivia glanced over. The man was striking. Dark hair, swept back from sharp features, his tailored charcoal suit contrasting with the casual stance of his hands in his pockets. Something in his solitude and intense concentration made her pause. "That's Julian Blackwood," whispered another gallery patron nearby. "He never comes to these events. Word is he's worth billions but barely speaks to anyone." "I dare you to go kiss him," Zoe suddenly announced, eyes glittering with mischief. "What? No," Olivia hissed, nearly choking on her champagne. "I'm not assaulting a stranger." "Not assault, just a peck on the cheek. Come on, Liv, when's the last time you did something spontaneous? You're always telling your students to take artistic risks." Olivia rolled her eyes. At 32, she'd built a comfortable life teaching art at a community center. But even she had to admit things had become predictable. Her last relationship had ended 6 months ago with her ex claiming she was too safe. "I'll donate $100 to your art program if you do it," Zoe challenged, knowing exactly how to tempt her friend. The community center was perpetually underfunded. 200, Olivia countered, knowing it was madness even as a strange boldness seized her. "Deal," Zoe grinned. "Just a peck. Go." Heart-hammering, Olivia smoothed her copper curls and crossed the room. The mysterious Julian Blackwood still hadn't moved, seemingly lost in contemplation of the painting's chaotic brushstrokes. She took a deep breath, stepped beside him, and whispered, "Excuse me." He turned, gray eyes widening slightly at her proximity. "I'm sorry about this," she murmured, then quickly pressed her lips to his cheek, catching the faint scent of sandalwood and something distinctly masculine. Time seemed to freeze. When she pulled back, his expression wasn't angry as she'd feared, it was stunned. Completely, utterly stunned, as though she'd done something incomprehensible. "That was for art," she said lamely, feeling heat rise to her face. "And a donation. Sorry to disturb you." Without waiting for a response, she turned and fled back to Zoe, who was doubled over in silent laughter. "I can't believe you actually did it," her friend wheezed. "Neither can I," Olivia muttered, heart still pounding. "Now pay up. My kids need new supplies." As they prepared to leave shortly after, Olivia couldn't resist glancing back. Julian Blackwood was watching her now instead of the painting. His gaze so intense she felt it like a physical touch across the room. Something in that look, confusion, wonder, perhaps even longing, made her stomach flip unexpectedly. "You know what's weird?" she whispered to Zoe. "He didn't seem offended. He seemed surprised, like no one's ever kissed his cheek before." "Well, if the rumors are true, people are probably too intimidated by his money and power," Zoe replied, pulling her toward the exit. "Come on, let's go before he calls security." But as they left, Olivia couldn't shake the feeling that something significant had just happened. It wasn't just the kiss, it was his reaction, as though she'd momentarily cracked some invisible barrier around him. The following morning, Olivia had nearly forgotten the entire episode as she set up her classroom at the West Side Community Center. The old building had peeling paint and outdated facilities, but it provided affordable arts education to underprivileged children, which gave Olivia more fulfillment than any high-paying job ever could. "Miss Bennet?" The center's administrator, Daphne, poked her head in the door. "There's someone here to see you. Says it's important." "Tell them I start class in 15, Olivia began, then froze as a familiar figure appeared behind Daphne. Julian Blackwood stood in her classroom doorway, looking even more imposing in daylight. Gone was the formal suit, replaced by a simple black sweater and jeans that somehow looked just as expensive. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes found hers immediately. "You're a difficult woman to track down, Miss Bennett," he said, his voice deeper than she'd expected. "How did you even find me?" she asked, suddenly aware of her paint-splattered apron and messy hair. A hint of a smile touched his lips. "I have resources. I'd like to speak with you if you have a moment." As Daphne excused herself with a curious backward glance, Olivia realized that the spontaneous, silly dare from last night had somehow catapulted her into uncharted territory. The look in Julian Blackwood's eyes told her this was just the beginning of something she couldn't possibly anticipate. And despite her practical nature, despite all rational thought telling her to send him away, Olivia found herself saying, "I have 15 minutes before my students arrive." What she didn't say was that for the first time in years she felt the thrill of stepping into the unknown, all because of a kiss that was never meant to be anything but a joke. Unexpected pursuit. "You have an interesting approach to art appreciation," Julian said, his eyes traveling around Olivia's classroom, taking in the children's paintings hanging on clotheslines and the mismatched art supplies organized in recycled containers. Olivia folded her arms defensively. "Look, about last night. I'm sorry, it was childish and inappropriate. My friend dared me and I'm not here for an apology," Julian interrupted, his voice softer than his imposing presence. "Would suggest, I'm here because of this." He gestured toward a wall covered with colorful handprints. "Your website says you believe art changes lives. I'm curious how." Olivia blinked, caught off guard. "You researched me because of a random kiss? A ghost?" A smile touched his lips. "I research everything that surprises me, Miss Bennett, and you definitely surprised me." Something in his gaze made her heart skip. "It's just Olivia. And to answer your question, art gives people a voice when they don't have one. These kids," she gestured around the room, "many of them come from difficult situations. Art gives them power." Julian nodded, studying her with an intensity that made her shift uncomfortably. "Your time's almost up," she pointed out, glancing at the clock. "Have dinner with me tonight," he said abruptly. "Excuse me?" "Dinner. A conversation. Nothing more." His confidence was unnerving, as though rejection wasn't an option he'd considered. "I don't even know you," Olivia countered. Julian reached into his pocket and handed her a business card. Simple, elegant, with just his name and a phone number. "Now you have a starting point." Before she could respond, the sound of children's voices filled the hallway. Julian moved toward the door. "Text me your answer. I'll wait until 5 p.m. As he left, Olivia stood frozen, the small card burning between her fingers. Throughout her classes that day, Olivia found herself distracted. Why would a billionaire tech entrepreneur be interested in a community art teacher who'd played a silly prank on him? The kiss had meant nothing, a momentary madness she'd already regretted. "Miss Bennett, you're using the wrong color." 8-year-old, Tyler pointed out, snapping her back to reality. She looked down to find she'd been mixing red into blue instead of yellow. "You're right, Tyler. Good catch." By the end of her final class, Olivia had convinced herself not to text Julian. Men like him didn't simply appear in women's lives without an agenda. Yet as she cleaned paint-splattered tables, her phone seemed to grow heavier in her pocket. "You should go," Daphne said, leaning against the doorframe with knowing eyes. "Go. Where?" "Wherever that handsome man in expensive shoes wanted to take you," Daphne replied. "Don't think I didn't notice how he looked at you." "How was that?" Olivia asked, despite herself. "Like you were the first sunrise he'd seen after a very long night." Olivia laughed, but the description lingered. At 4:55 p.m., she pulled out her phone and typed, "I don't make a habit of having dinner with strangers. Coffee at Riverside Cafe tomorrow at 2 p.m. My treat." She hesitated, then pressed send. His response came immediately. "I'll be there. The following afternoon, Olivia arrived early, choosing a table with a clear exit route and telling herself she was being practical, not nervous. When Julian walked in precisely at 2 p.m., conversations momentarily paused. He moved with the quiet confidence of someone accustomed to being watched, yet somehow managed to appear unaware of the attention. "You came," she stated as he sat across from her. "You sound surprised. Men like you usually have assistants cancel at the last minute." Julian's eyebrow arched. "Men like me? Successful? Important? Busy?" she clarified, feeling slightly embarrassed. "And what did you expect from men like me?" he asked, a hint of amusement in his voice. Olivia studied him over her coffee cup. "I expected you to be offended by the kiss, or to ignore it entirely. I didn't expect you to track me down like something out of a film." "I'm not good with conventional social interactions," Julian admitted, surprising her with his candor. "But I know when something feels significant." A brief silence fell between them. Olivia noticed his hands, strong, with a small scar across the right knuckles. Not the manicured hands she'd expected from someone with his wealth. "Why art?" Julian asked suddenly. "You have a master's degree from Rhode Island School of Design. You could work in any gallery." "You really did your research," she observed, unsettled by his knowledge. "I teach because it matters. Galleries are for people who already have access to beauty. My kids need it more." Something shifted in Julian's expression, a softening around the eyes that transformed his entire face. "That's the same reason you kissed me, isn't it? On a dare, yes, but also because you saw someone who needed something." The observation was so unexpected that Olivia felt momentarily transparent. "I didn't think that deeply about it," she defended, though something about his words resonated uncomfortably. "Most people see the net worth, the company. They want something," Julian continued. "You just saw someone standing alone too long with a painting." Their coffee stretched into an hour, then two. Julian spoke little of himself, instead asking questions about her work, her students, her theories on creativity. When Olivia finally glanced at her watch, she was shocked to discover the afternoon had disappeared. "I should go," she said, gathering her things. "I have lesson plans to finish." Julian nodded, then hesitated. "The community center's fundraiser next month. Your director mentioned it when I arrived yesterday." "What about it?" "I'd like to help. Not with money," he added quickly, seeing her expression. "With resources, connections, whatever you need." Olivia studied him cautiously. "Why?" "Because what you're doing matters," he replied simply. As they stood outside the cafe, an uncomfortable realization dawned on Olivia. She wanted to see him again, this strange, intense man who'd appeared in her life through a random act of foolishness. "There's an exhibition at the Modern Museum this Friday," she found herself saying. "Student work from community programs like mine, if you're interested in what art can do." Julian's smile, the first real one she'd seen, transformed his face entirely. "Text me the details." Watching him walk away, Olivia felt a strange mixture of anticipation and alarm. Whatever game they were playing, it wasn't following any rules she recognized. Later that evening, a courier delivered a package to her apartment, a first edition of her favorite art theory book, one she'd mentioned briefly during their conversation. The note simply read, "Until Friday." Olivia traced her fingers over the elegant handwriting, wondering what she'd set in motion with that impulsive kiss. Julian Blackwood was pursuing her, carefully, thoughtfully, and with a determination that both thrilled and terrified her. And despite all her practical instincts screaming caution, she found herself looking forward to Friday with an intensity that matched his own. Worlds apart, the student art exhibition buzzed with energy that Friday evening. Young artists proudly stood beside their work, explaining their techniques to interested patrons. Olivia moved through the crowd, stopping frequently to congratulate her students, her face radiant with pride. She quote, "Dee almost convinced herself Julian wouldn't come. Men of his stature had unpredictable schedules, important meetings, perhaps even private jets waiting to whisk them to Tokyo or Paris. Yet when she turned toward the entrance, there he was, scanning the room, clearly searching for her. He wore a simple navy suit that probably cost more than her monthly rent but had forgone a tie. When his eyes finally found her, Something in his expression made her breath catch. "You came," she said when he reached her side. "I said I would." The simplicity of his response highlighted how accustomed she'd become to broken promises. "This is Mariana," Olivia introduced, gesturing to a shy 12-year-old nearby. She created that piece about her grandmother's migration story. Julian knelt to be at eye level with the girl, examining her collage with genuine interest. "The way you've layered these photographs with fabric scraps is remarkable," he said. "You've created texture and history simultaneously." Mariana's eyes widened and she launched into an enthusiastic explanation of her process. Olivia watched, startled by Julian's natural rapport with the child. He asked insightful questions and listened with complete attention, the same intensity he'd shown her at the cafe. As they moved through the exhibition, Julian greeted each of her students with similar respect. Not once did he check his phone or appear distracted. Several times Olivia caught him making notes in a small leather notebook. "What are you writing?" she finally asked. "Ideas. Connections. People who should see this work." He glanced up. "These kids have extraordinary talent. They deserve more visibility." The evening progressed and Olivia found herself increasingly aware of the contrast between Julian and her usual world. Gallery directors who had previously ignored her funding requests now approached eagerly, clearly hoping to connect with the elusive billionaire. Several times she overheard whispers, "That's Julian Blackwood. What's he doing here?" Followed by speculation about potential donations or acquisitions. "Does it bother you?" she asked as they stood before a vibrant mural created by her teen class. "Being seen as a wallet rather than a person?" Julian's expression remained neutral, but something flickered in his eyes. "I've grown accustomed to it." "That's not the same as it not bothering you." He studied her face. "You're unusually perceptive." "I teach art. I notice details." She hesitated. "Like how you flinch slightly whenever someone mentions your company but you light up when discussing creative concepts. Or how you've positioned yourself with your back to the wall all evening, keeping the exits in view." Julian stilled, his casual demeanor slipping momentarily to reveal something more guarded. "Most people don't look that closely." "I'm not most people." "No," he agreed quietly. "You're not." As the exhibition wound down, Julian helped her students pack up their artwork, carefully wrapping framed pieces and stacking portfolios. Olivia watched him work alongside 14-year-old Diego, showing the boy how to properly secure the corners of his canvas for transport. Later, as they walked toward the parking lot, a sleek black car pulled up, and a driver emerged. "Your carriage awaits," Olivia teased, suddenly uncomfortable with the reminder of their different worlds. Julian hesitated, then asked, "Would you join me for dinner? There's a small place near the harbor." The invitation hung between them, weighted with possibilities. Every practical instinct told Olivia to decline, to maintain professional boundaries. Yet the memory of his patient interactions with her students, the genuine respect he'd shown their work. "I should help finish packing up," she hedged. "The exhibition director assured me they have it covered," Julian countered. "They seemed quite eager to handle everything after you left." Olivia laughed. "I wonder why." "Their sudden efficiency has nothing to do with me," Julian said with a perfectly straight face, though his eyes betrayed him. "Of course not," she agreed, matching his tone. After a moment's deliberation, she nodded. "Dinner sounds nice." The small place turned out to be an exclusive waterfront restaurant, where the maitre d' greeted Julian by name and led them to a private terrace overlooking the harbor. Soft lighting cast a warm glow over linen-covered tables, and distant boat lights twinkled on the water. "When you said small place, I pictured something with paper menus and plastic chairs," Olivia commented, taking in the elegant surroundings. Julian looked genuinely confused. "Would you prefer that?" "No, this is beautiful, just unexpected." Their conversation flowed easily through appetizers, touching on everything from art history to childhood memories. For the first time, Julian shared fragments of his own life, growing up as the awkward son of a brilliant mathematician, founding his tech company at 22, the isolation that came with rapid success. Success changes how people see you, he explained, rotating his wine glass thoughtfully. Eventually, you stop recognizing yourself in their perception. Is that why you were alone at the gallery that night? Olivia asked. She trailed off, still embarrassed by the kiss. Something like vulnerability crossed Julian's features. I go to galleries to remember what it feels like to see beauty without analyzing its market potential or technological application. And then, I ruined it with my childish dare, Olivia groaned. You didn't ruin anything, Julian said quietly. You made me visible again. Not as Julian Blackwood, CEO, but just as a person standing in front of a painting. The sincerity in his voice created a sudden intimacy that Olivia wasn't prepared for. She redirected, asking about his company's latest projects. Immediately, Julian's expression shifted back to polite detachment. Boring technical details. He deflected. Nothing compared to watching Mariana's face when you praised her work tonight. As their evening concluded, the driver reappeared to take Olivia home. At her apartment building, modest but in a pleasant neighborhood, Julian walked her to the entrance. Thank you for tonight, he said, for including me in something that matters to you. The genuine appreciation in his voice touched her unexpectedly. Thank you for seeing them, she responded. My students, really seeing them. A moment of silence stretched between them, filled with unspoken questions. Olivia, Julian began, then hesitated. I'd like to see you again. The simple statement contained multitudes, an admission, a request, a risk. Standing in the shadow of her apartment building, Olivia felt the vast differences between their worlds. His life of boardrooms and business jets seemed incompatible with her paint-stained classroom and budget grocery shopping. I'm not sure that's wise, she admitted. We're from different planets, Julian. Planets can align, he countered softly. The earnestness in his expression almost broke her resolve. Even when they do, it's temporary, she said. I have a life I've built carefully. My students need consistency, not complications. Pain flickered across Julian's face before his composed mask returned. He nodded once, respecting her decision without challenging it. I understand. As his car disappeared into the night, Olivia told herself she'd made the right choice. Their brief connection had been lovely but ultimately impractical. A pleasant detour, nothing more. Yet as she entered her empty apartment, the lingering scent of his cologne on her jacket made her question whether practicality was truly as important as she'd always believed. Somewhere between a spontaneous kiss and tonight's dinner, Julian Blackwood had become more than a billionaire enigma. He'd become someone who saw the world, and her, with rare clarity. She reached for her phone 3 times that night, composing and deleting messages, before finally setting it aside. Some divides were too wide to bridge, no matter how aligned the planets might momentarily appear. The truth behind the mask. 2 weeks passed without a word from Julian. Olivia threw herself into her work, telling herself that the hollow feeling in her chest was merely disappointment over a potential donor lost for the community center. She had been right to end things before they truly began. Their worlds were simply too different. Yet Julian's absence left an unexpected void. Several times she found herself glancing toward the classroom door during lessons, half expecting to see his tall figure leaning against the frame. Her phone remained stubbornly silent. No couriers appeared with thoughtfully chosen gifts. The universe had respected her decision completely. You look miserable, Daphne observed bluntly one afternoon as they sorted through donated art supplies. I'm fine, Olivia insisted, separating dried-out markers from usable ones. Just tired. Daphne gave her a knowing look. You miss him. There's nothing to miss. We barely knew each other. Sometimes it doesn't take long to recognize something special. Olivia sighed, tossing a capless marker into the trash with unnecessary force. Even if that were true, which I'm not saying it is, some things aren't practical. He's Julian Blackwood. I teach art to kids on a shoestring budget. And, Daphne challenged, since when does practical equal right? Before Olivia could respond, the community center's director, Rodney, burst into the room, his usually calm demeanor replaced with barely contained excitement. You'll never guess who just called, he announced. The Whitmore Foundation. They want to feature our program in their annual fundraiser gala. It could mean hundreds of thousands in funding. Olivia froze, marker in hand. The Whitmore Foundation? They never support programs our size? How did they even hear about us? Rodney shrugged. They mentioned something about seeing our students work at the Modern Museum exhibition, said they were impressed by our approach to arts education. A suspicion formed in Olivia's mind. Did they mention anyone specific who recommended us? Not that I recall. Does it matter? This is huge for us, Liv. As Rodney outlined the details of the upcoming gala, Olivia's thoughts drifted to Julian. It seemed too coincidental, the Foundation's sudden interest following so closely after the exhibition he'd attended. Yet if he had orchestrated this opportunity, he'd deliberately kept his name out of it. That evening, Olivia searched online for connections between Julian Blackwood and the Whitmore Foundation. She found nothing definitive but discovered that the Foundation's founder, Eleanor Whitmore, had been a pioneering woman in technology, possibly someone Julian admired or had worked with. After an hour of hesitation, she finally texted him. Did you have anything to do with the Whitmore Foundation contacting the community center? 3 dots appeared immediately, then disappeared. Minutes passed. Finally, they make their own decisions about worthy programs. The careful non-answer confirmed her suspicions. Why didn't you take credit? This time his response came quickly. Because it wasn't about me. Your program deserves recognition on its own merits. Olivia stared at her phone, unexpected tears pricking her eyes. In a world where most people demanded acknowledgement for even the smallest favors, Julian had used his influence silently, seeking no recognition. Thank you, she wrote simply. No need for thanks. How have you been? The casual question opened a floodgate. Before she knew it, they were texting about her latest class projects, his frustrations with a coding problem, a book they'd both recently read. The conversation flowed as though the 2-week silence had never happened, as though she hadn't essentially rejected him on her doorstep. Near midnight, Julian wrote, I've respected your boundaries, but I miss our conversations. Would you consider coffee again? Just as friends. Olivia quotes fingers hovered over the keyboard. The sensible answer remained the same. Their worlds were incompatible, yet the thought of saying no again felt increasingly wrong. Yes, she typed before she could overthink it. Tomorrow? Same place? I'll be there at 2. The following day, Olivia arrived at the cafe to find Julian already waiting, a steaming cup of her preferred tea beside his coffee. He stood when he saw her, his usual composed expression briefly giving way to genuine pleasure. You remembered my order, she noted, sliding into the seat across from him. I remember everything about our conversations, he replied simply. They fell easily into discussion, the awkwardness of their last parting gradually dissolving. An hour passed, then 2. As afternoon shadows lengthened, Julian checked his watch reluctantly. I have a board meeting, he explained. I've already postponed it once. Don't let me keep you from running your empire, Olivia teased. Something unreadable crossed his face. Would you like to see it sometime where I work? The invitation surprised her. Your office? More than that. My company, my world. His eyes held hers. You said we're from different planets. Perhaps if you saw mine, it wouldn't seem so alien. The request felt significant, a deliberate opening of a door she'd previously closed. Against her better judgment, Olivia found herself nodding. 2 days. Later, she stood in the gleaming lobby of Blackwood Technologies, feeling thoroughly out of place in her modest dress among sharp-suited executives and sleekly dressed assistants. Julian himself met her at reception, looking both familiar and foreign in his CEO attire, Charcoal suit, crisp white shirt, subtle platinum cufflinks. "Welcome," he said, his public voice slightly different from the one she knew, more modulated, less warm. As he guided her through the building, Olivia noticed how others responded to him, with deference bordering on fear. Gone was the man who'd knelt to discuss art with 12-year-old Mariana. This Julian moved with authority that commanded immediate attention, made decisions in seconds that likely affected thousands. "This is your natural habitat?" she asked quietly as they rode a private elevator to the research floors. "In a manner of speaking," he replied, though something in his tone suggested otherwise. The tour culminated in Julian's office, a minimalist space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Unlike the sterile decor she'd expected, one wall displayed a rotating collection of digital artwork by emerging artists, while another held bookshelves filled with an eclectic mixture of technical manuals, philosophy texts, and art books. "Not what you pictured?" Julian asked, noting her surprise. "I expected more. I don't know. Stark modernism, intimidating design, something that screams, successful tech billionaire." Julian's mouth quirked. "I spend too many hours here to surround myself with intimidating design." As they stood looking out over the city skyline, Olivia finally asked the question that had been nagging her since the exhibition night. "Why did you come looking for me after that kiss?" "The truth, Julian." He was quiet for so long she thought he might not answer. When he finally spoke, his voice had lost its CEO polish, revealing something raw underneath. "I haven't been genuinely surprised by anything in years," he said slowly. "Success created a bubble where interactions became predictable. People either want something from me or fear me. Then suddenly, this woman I'd never met kissed me on a dare, with no agenda beyond the moment itself." He turned to face her. "Do you know how rare that is? To be seen as just a person, not as a resource or a symbol?" "It was just a silly dare," Olivia insisted, though her heart raced at the vulnerability in his expression. "No," Julian countered gently. "It was human connection without calculation. The kiss itself meant nothing, but the unguarded humanity behind it meant everything." Before she could respond, his office door burst open. A harried-looking executive rushed in, then stopped abruptly upon seeing Olivia. "Mr. Blackwood, I apologize for the interruption, but there's an urgent situation with the Reynolds acquisition. They're threatening to back out unless you personally attend the meeting." Julian's expression transformed instantly back into the composed CEO. "Tell them I'll be there in 20 minutes, Marcus." As the door closed, Julian turned to Olivia with regret. "I'm sorry." "Don't be. This is your life," she said, gesturing around them. "Important meetings, acquisitions, people depending on you." "It's not all of my life," he replied quietly. "Just the part most people see." Another interruption came in the form of Julian's assistant, requesting his signature on time-sensitive documents. Watching him shift seamlessly into executive mode, Olivia felt the divide between them widening again. This was his reality. Constant, demands enormous responsibilities, wealth and power that shaped every interaction. "I should go," she said when they were alone again. "You have more important things to handle." "Nothing is more important," Julian began, but his phone buzzed, insistently. Checking it, he grimaced. "The Reynolds team is already in the conference room." "Go," Olivia urged. "I can find my way out." Conflict played across Julian's features before resignation set in. "I'll call you tonight," he promised, already moving toward the door. Left alone in his office, Olivia wandered to his desk, noticing a small framed photograph half hidden behind a stack of reports, the only personal item visible in the otherwise impersonal space. It showed a young boy, perhaps 10 years old, sitting alone on stone steps, a book open on his lap, oblivious to the other children playing nearby. Something about the solitary image made her heart ache. She recognized that kind of aloneness. Not just being alone, but being fundamentally separate even in a crowd. As she made her way through the building's gleaming corridors, Olivia finally understood. Julian Blackwood wasn't just a wealthy man playing at interest in her community work. He was someone who had lived in isolation despite being surrounded by people, someone who recognized the same quality in her, despite their vastly different circumstances. The truth behind his carefully maintained mask wasn't wealth or power, but profound loneliness. And in that truth, despite all their differences, Olivia recognized a soul unexpectedly similar to her own. Rewriting. The stars Julian's call never came that night. Instead, as Olivia was preparing for bed, a text message appeared. I apologize for today. The meeting ran until midnight. May I see you tomorrow? There's something important I need to say. She stared at the message, feeling the familiar pull between caution and connection. After several minutes, she replied, I'm teaching until 4. After that, I'll pick you up at the center at 4:30. Thank you. The following day crawled by, Olivia's attention constantly drifting from her students to the clock. When Julian's car finally appeared outside the community center, her heart performed an embarrassing somersault that no 32-year-old should experience. He emerged from the vehicle looking uncharacteristically casual in dark jeans and a gray sweater, his usual corporate armor nowhere to be seen. No board meetings today? She asked as he approached. I've cleared my schedule, Julian replied, a new determination in his eyes. There's somewhere I'd like to take you if you're willing. Curiosity overrode hesitation, and Olivia found herself nodding. They drove in comfortable silence, the cityscape gradually giving way to tree-lined suburbs, then finally to winding coastal roads. After nearly an hour, Julian turned onto a private drive leading to a modest cottage perched on a cliff, overlooking the ocean. This isn't what I expected, Olivia admitted as they parked. I was picturing some glass and steel architectural masterpiece. Julian's mouth quirked. That exists too, but it's not home. The cottage interior was surprisingly warm, bookshelves, overflowing with well-worn volumes, comfortable furniture arranged to maximize the spectacular ocean view, and most surprisingly, art everywhere. Not the investment-grade pieces she might have expected, but eclectic works that spoke of personal connection rather than monetary value. You live here? Olivia asked, taking in a particularly striking sculpture made of driftwood and copper wire. Whenever I can escape, Julian confirmed, watching her explore. The penthouse downtown is for convenience and appearances. This is where I actually live. Olivia paused before a series of framed photographs, landscapes, architectural details, human moments, captured with remarkable sensitivity. These are beautiful. Who's the photographer? I am, Julian said quietly. She turned to him, surprised. You never mentioned you were a photographer. There's a lot I haven't told you, he acknowledged. That's why I brought you here. I wanted you to see the real me, not just Julian Blackwood, CEO. He guided her through glass doors onto a deck suspended over the cliff edge. The late afternoon sun cast golden light across the water, waves crashing against rocks below. They stood side by side, the wind carrying salt and promise. I saw the photograph on your desk, Olivia said finally. The boy with the book. Julian stilled. My father took that. I was 11. You were alone even then. He nodded, eyes fixed on the horizon. My mind worked differently from other children's. I understood algorithms better than playground games. A pause. People have always been difficult for me to navigate. Yet you built a technology empire centered on human connection, Olivia observed. Ironic, isn't it? A sad smile crossed his face. I created tools to help people communicate because I struggled with it myself. The revelation settled between them, pieces of Julian's puzzle finally connecting. His intensity, his careful observation of others, his hunger for genuine interaction, all stemming from a lifetime of feeling fundamentally separate. After my company went public, the isolation only grew worse, Julian continued. Suddenly, every interaction became a transaction. People wanted funding, connections, influence, never just conversation. And then some random woman kissed you on a dare, Olivia said softly, Julian turned to her, vulnerability naked in his expression, and looked at me like I was just a man, not a balance sheet. He took a careful breath. That's what I needed to tell you, Olivia. It was never about the kiss itself. It was about being seen, truly seen for the first time in years. The raw honesty in his voice reached something deep inside her. Olivia recognized the same loneliness she'd carried through her own life. Different circumstances, but the same, essential ache. I understand isolation too, she admitted. I connect with my students through art because it's safer than connecting directly. I help them express themselves because I struggle to do it myself. We're more alike than different, Julian said quietly. The setting sun painted them in gold and shadow as silence stretched between them. Finally, Julian spoke again, his voice low and certain. I know you believe our worlds are too far apart. But this, he gestured at the cottage, the art, the ocean beyond. This is my actual world. The company, the boardrooms, the acquisitions, they're just what I do, not who I am. Olivia's carefully constructed barriers began to crumble. I've been afraid, she confessed. Not of your world being too different from mine, but of it swallowing mine completely, of losing myself in your orbit. I would never want that, Julian said fiercely. Your independence, your passion for teaching, your unflinching honesty, these are what draw me to you. He took a step closer. I don't want to change your life, Olivia. I just want to be part of it. The simple truth of his words struck her with unexpected force. All her logical arguments about their differences suddenly seemed hollow compared to the fundamental recognition between them. I've never met anyone who sees me the way you do, she whispered. Julian, S eyes held hers. Then perhaps we've both been looking in the wrong places. As darkness fell over the ocean, they talked for hours about their childhoods, their fears, their dreams beyond their professional identities. Julian described how photography had become his way of truly seeing the world. Olivia revealed how teaching art had saved her during her darkest times. The conversation flowed with an ease that made mockery of their supposed differences. When morning light finally crept across the horizon, they had moved to the living room, cups of tea long cold beside them. Julian looked at Olivia with newfound clarity. I don't believe in fate, he said. I'm too logical for that, but I do believe in statistical improbabilities that change everything. Like a spontaneous kiss between strangers? Olivia suggested, smiling. Exactly. He reached for her hand, his touch tentative despite his usual confidence. I'm not asking for promises, Olivia. Just possibility. A chance to see where this leads, without the barriers we've both constructed. Olivia looked at their intertwined fingers, then at the man before her. Not the billionaire CEO the world knew, but the thoughtful photographer who captured beauty in unexpected places, the lonely boy who'd grown into a man still seeking genuine connection. I'm terrible at relationships, she warned. I work too much, I forget important dates, and I sometimes go days without talking when I'm deep in a project. Julian laughed, the sound warming the space between them. I once worked 72 hours straight without noticing. I've accidentally stood up my own board of directors because I was coding. We're both disasters in our own way. A matched set of disasters, Olivia mused, squeezing his hand. That actually sounds, right. 6 months later, the Whitmore Foundation's annual gala was transformed by an unusual exhibition, a collaboration between Blackwood Technologies and the Westside Community Center. Interactive digital canvases allowed underprivileged students to showcase their artwork alongside professional pieces, technology amplifying rather than replacing traditional artistic expression. At the center of the exhibition stood Olivia and Julian, neither fully in one world nor the other, but creating something new between them. His technology and resources had expanded her program's reach. Her artistic vision had humanized his company's approach to innovation. Their relationship hadn't been without challenges. Tabloids had briefly obsessed over the billionaire and the art teacher romance. Julian's board had questioned his sudden interest in community arts funding. Olivia's friends had warned her, about being blinded by wealth and power. Yet standing together amidst the successful merger of their worlds, those concerns seemed distant. What remained was the essential truth they discovered that night at the cottage. Beneath the surface differences lay two people who recognized in each other something long missing, the profound understanding of what it meant to find connection after a lifetime of feeling unseen. "Look at Mariana's face," Olivia whispered, nodding toward her student who was excitedly demonstrating her interactive artwork to a group of impressed patrons. Julian, S arm tightened around her waist. "Worth every minute of the coding nightmare this project created." "Are you happy?" she asked, suddenly studying his face. "With all this?" Her gesture encompassed not just the exhibition, but the careful balancing act their relationship required. His corporate responsibilities, her teaching commitment, the constant negotiation between their different but increasingly overlapping lives. Julian considered the question with characteristic thoughtfulness. "I spent years building a company that connects people while feeling fundamentally disconnected myself," he said finally. "Now I have both, so yes, I'm happier than I ever imagined possible." "All because of a ridiculous dare," Olivia marveled. "No," Julian corrected gently. "All because you were brave enough to look past the surface and see the person underneath. The kiss was just the beginning. You choosing to know me, the real me, that was the true gift." As they moved through the crowded exhibition, navigating between Olivia's students and Julian's colleagues with practiced ease, they no longer appeared to be from different worlds. Instead, they seemed to occupy a shared space of their own creation. One, where an impulsive kiss between strangers had somehow, against all statistical probability, transformed into something neither had been looking for, but both had always needed. They had, in their own quiet way, rewritten the stars.